Greetings, my fellow freaks and weirdos, I'm Tom and welcome to Monster Gab, where we love to talk about classic and vintage horror. And in today's episode we're going to be talking about Hideous Sun Demon from 1958. That's one hell of a title, isn't it? Hideous Sun Demon. This is a very typical sci-fi B-movie from the 1950s. A decade where science fiction and horror really collided and became quite the trend. There was an abundance of films about things in or from outer space, and the 1950s was often referred to as the atomic age, where fear of radiation and the effects it may cause was a popular subject within the movies of the time. Hideous Sun Demon fits right into that category, but it's often thought of as a bad film. Amongst these B-movie sci-fi horror films are some genuinely good titles, classics even. But let's be honest, the majority of them are not great, when compared to other movies perhaps. They were goofy, tongue-in-cheek, with stories so incredibly unbelievable and far-fetched. Not to mention plot holes galore. The creatures or monsters looked ridiculous and fake. A lot of these movies come across as cheap and have not aged well at all. And yet, people love them. And quite often, all of the negative things that I've just said are the reasons why people love them. They want to see all of that hammy, cheesy stuff in there. It's part of the charm of what makes these kind of movies. It's like it's a staple feature for this particular subgenre, and so the movies are exactly the way they're meant to be. With that in mind, those particular people, cult followers, fans, think that these are good movies, including people like me, who grew up watching these kinds of movies, which were a gateway into my passion and love for horror. So is Hideous Sun Demon any different? Is it really that bad? Well, I can only share my opinion with you, I guess. This one stars Robert Clark, who also produced the movie and co-wrote the story, so I believe, but correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong. It also stars Patricia Manning, Nan Peterson and Patrick White. So here is the synopsis then. Apparently, it is newly discovered that the sun has been releasing hazardous levels of radiation. Dr. Gilbert McKenna, a scientist played by Robert Clark, becomes exposed to the radiation and is rushed to hospital, but he appears to be fine and survives the ordeal. That is, until he steps outside, where the rays of the sun have a biological effect on him and turns him into a lizard man creature thing. This happens each time he is in direct sunlight, and during this transformation he develops violent and deadly tendencies. Ain't that a bitch? Hey horror fans, this video is sponsored by 𝙲𝚘𝚅𝚘𝚔, who believe in encouraging self-confidence, self-expression and the pursuit of passions without compromise. Based in North Wales, they use their passion for classic cars, music, film and societal non-conformity to inspire their designs, with hoodies, t-shirts, hats and much more in men's, women's and kids sizes, using only quality materials and prints. Be different, be rebellious, 𝙲𝚘𝚅𝚘𝚔𝚅. Check out their website, Facebook page and other socials, links in the description below. Let's talk about this movie then, and Hideous Sun Demon is not too dissimilar from being a werewolf movie. As in, the events of many werewolf movies usually include a person who turns into a wolf-like creature whenever he or she is exposed to the light of a full moon. In this movie, rather than a full moon, it's the light of the sun that turns Dr. Gilbert McKenna into, well, I'm not quite sure what he's meant to be. I mean, the title of the movie says demon, but I don't think that's right. I can't quite remember, but I think the movie explains that each time he is exposed to the sun, he devolves into a dinosaur. That can't be right. Have I convinced you to watch this yet? Anyway, whatever he's meant to be, let's all agree that he becomes some kind of dangerous, ugly creature. As for the makeup effects, I actually think the creature looks really good. I've no doubt many will laugh at how the creature looks, but I think for its time they did a good job. To me, he looks hideous and scaly, as he's meant to be. Or at least his face and hands anyway. I will get to the rest later. The audience doesn't have to wait long for the reveal of the creature, as it happens within the first 10 minutes of the film. Sadly, we don't see much more of it until the final third of the movie, but with a short running time of 75 minutes, I think it gets an ample amount of screen time. A bit more wouldn't have gone amiss though. The creature is also an incredibly brutal killer too. Which reminds me, this is probably a bit of a spoiler, but if you're one of those people who can't watch the movie if the dog dies, do not watch this one. Good lord. Poor dog. But even as a regular guy, Gilbert's character is emotionally unstable and ends up in a couple of scuffles himself. The fight scenes add just a little more action to the movie, which I think is needed, otherwise the movie can get a bit uninteresting at times. Gilbert also has a couple of odd character traits. First of all, he's an alcoholic. It's suggested that Gilbert should stay indoors, out of the sun, until a medical cure is discovered. But instead, his addiction gets the better of him and he leaves his home to drink at the bar. At night, of course, so he doesn't turn into the creature or anything, but it's still reckless. Now, I get that alcoholism is a genuine illness and a lot of people do suffer as a result of it, but I don't think it works here. Let's say if Gilbert left his home because he felt imprisoned and he was losing his mind, I think the audience would feel more sympathetic. Instead, he puts himself and other people in danger simply because he needs a fix. And I just don't think it sits well. Also, I don't mean to derive from Gilbert's character, but this movie has some odd dialogue. When talking about Gilbert's alcoholism, Patrick White's character quotes, "Whiskey and soda does not make whiskey and science." What the hell does that mean? What is whiskey and science? Also, somebody asks Gilbert, "What's with the dark glasses at night?" To which he replies, "I've been to the hospital." What? It's a good question though. Why is he wearing dark glasses at night? His issue has nothing to do with his eyes. He doesn't change into the creature at night, and during the day the rest of his body is still exposed to the sun. But I digress. Gilbert's character. So another one of his traits, he appears to be a bit of a womanizer. Patricia Manning plays the part of Anne, Gilbert's lab assistant, but we're given the impression that she's sort of a love interest in the movie. She has a lot of care and consideration, and I'd say affection for Gilbert in a way that makes me think they're in some kind of relationship. But instantly after her first scene, we see Gilbert in a hospital bed flirting with a nurse in quite an assertive way. Later in the movie, he meets a lounge singer at a bar named Trudy, played by Nan Peterson. They have a bit of a romantic fling that leads you to thinking that maybe she's the love interest in the movie. But Anne's character keeps cropping up too, and the way she talks to Gilbert and about him comes across like there are romantic feelings. The alcoholism and the womanizing doesn't necessarily make Gilbert a bad guy or unlikable. But if anything fateful were to happen to him, I don't think these traits help the audience to evoke any emotion for him. Usually, movie makers like their audiences to connect and feel sorry for the monsters in these type of films. Hideous Sun Demon has its fair share of plot holes, but like I said earlier, that goes with the charm. But there is a strange scene that makes me shake my head. Gilbert takes Trudy to the beach and tries to kiss her by forcing himself on her. She's not interested and fights back, punching him even. She manages to break free and lands into an oncoming tidal wave, completely soaking her from head to toe, including the dress she's wearing, then laughs it off and falls right back into Gilbert's embrace. It's like, what the hell just happened? It makes no sense. Anyway, let's talk about the pros and cons of this movie then. One of the pros for me are the makeup effects for the creature. I actually genuinely think it looks good for its time, especially the hands and face. Another pro for me is a song that's used in the movie called Strange Pursuit. The song is performed by the character of Trudy in the movie, or rather Nan Peterson, who plays Trudy, mimes to it. It was originally performed and written by Marilyn King, and it almost sounds like a Billie Holiday song, and I'm quite a fan of Billie Holiday. I suppose it's not really relevant, but I love how the song is used within the film. There's a scene that takes place at this really dank, seedy, rough-looking bar, and Trudy's character, I think, is meant to add a bit of class to this bar, but instead she performs this really kind of moody, yet husky song, and it just kind of fits with the surroundings. And yeah, I guess the song just kind of works in this surrounding and situation, and I also do kind of like the song. Like I said, it does sound like a Billie Holiday song, and I like that kind of music. Although it does appear that Trudy doesn't really know any other songs because we hear it like 3 times within the movie. One final pro for me are the kills in the movie. They're pretty brutal. I mean, they're not gory or bloody or anything, but they add to the element of horror. As for the cons in this movie, the body costume of the creature. I know I praised the makeup effects for the hands and the face, but the rest of the body just looks terrible. The shame of it is, it was totally unnecessary to be seen. There's a moment in the movie where Gilbert's character gets his shirt caught on something, I can't remember what it is, and his shirt gets torn off. But there's no need for it, it's totally unnecessary. But we see the rest of the body of the creature and it just looks like a guy wearing a rubber suit. I mean, you can see the material and the way it folds and it looks fake. And to me, I just think it ruins the effect of the creature. Especially as, like I said, it was just unnecessary. If the rest of the effects on his body looked good, I'd understand why they'd want to show it on screen, but like I said, it looks fake and it just didn't need to be there, and to me it ruins the end of the movie. Another con for me is just how average everything is about this movie. When it comes to the directing or the cinematography, even the music, none of it's bad, and I do mean that, but it's just average at best. It's not noteworthy, there's nothing there worth talking about. Admittedly, the acting is to be desired in many parts of this movie, but it's not enough to put me off. There's not much of a story, and the movie tries to be original, though it's just not. I mean, the concept of someone turning into a creature by the light of a sun has been seen before in many werewolf movies, only instead of the sun, it's the light of a full moon. So it's not really an original concept. And this movie tries to have a climactic ending, and it kind of is, but it's very unoriginal. You can predict what's going to happen, and it's just something we've seen in movies before. One final con for me is the creature's screen time, I guess. I mean, the creature gets enough screen time as far as the story is concerned, but I think audience members would have liked to have seen it a bit more. I know I certainly would have done. Anyway, I'm going to rate this movie out of 10. And as I mentioned in the pros and cons, most of this movie is very average, and so it's only going to get an average score of 6 out of 10 from me personally. But I will say that doesn't mean that this is a bad movie. Like I said earlier, a lot of people deem this a bad movie, and I don't think it is. I like it for my own kind of personal quirks, I suppose, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't think this is any worse than, say, many other B-movie sci-fi horror films that came out around the time. And so I don't think it's really that bad. I think it's worth checking out. It's certainly not for everyone. It will depend on what kind of subgenre of horror you're into. But if you're into these classic B-movie sci-fi horror films, I don't see why you wouldn't like Hideous Sun Demon. If you have seen this movie, I would like to hear your thoughts. So, have you seen this movie? And if you haven't, are you willing to check it out now you've seen this review? Please do let me know in the comments section below. Do you agree with the things I've said? Do you disagree? Once again, I would love to hear from you guys. And let me know if you guys have a favourite 1950s sci-fi horror B-movie. Speak to me, guys. I genuinely do love hearing from you, and I love conversing with you in the comment section below. Anyway, that is all we've got time for in this particular episode. And until next time, I don't know who they are, but if you don't subscribe, they will get you. So make sure you are indeed subscribed. Click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content here on Monster Gab. Like the video if you did indeed like it, share this with your friends, and leave that comment down there below. Thank you so much for stopping by. Take care. See you soon. Bye bye.